is changing.
There is no doubt that having gender diversity at company leadership teams means better business outcomes, company reputation, greater creativity and openness, better productivity and profits.
2,289 new persons joined leadership roles of the stock's Euro 600 companies in 2020.
35% of them were women.
It is in the very best interest of a company to have a gender diverse board.
We have substantial evidence that gender diversity at the board level helps make companies profitable, innovative, and respected.
Management of a company is about utilizing its resources as effectively as possible.
Today, technology is bringing down some of the barriers that prevent women to be on boards, like life and work balance. But it's up to us to work together to bring down the rest of the barriers.
A diverse talent is a catalyst for better ideas and innovative thinking. The correlation is clear.
Using that wide variety of talent is a key success factor for my company.
The real question should be why not empowering a woman at board level? There, be confident, show up.
We women need to be a partner in the design of the solutions for the future. And we can do that by being on boards and in top management positions today.
Together, with joint forces, we can change and shape the better world.
Companies in Europe are changing. But not all of them and not everywhere. Find out more at the EWOB Gender Diversity Index 2020.
Good morning and welcome to our broadcast. We're delighted to be here this morning to speak with you. My name is John James. I'm the Business Development Manager for Deloitte Legal for Central and Eastern Europe. And I'm here with my colleague Diana.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, John. My name is Diana Rado-Roherova, and I'm a managing partner of Deloitte Czech Republic and the moderator for today's event. I feel very proud to being here and being with you because this event today, it's about gender diversity, gender equality. We invited plenty of amazing speakers, which I am sure you will fall in love. And at the same time, we will be introducing to you the results of the Gender Diversity Index prepared by the European Women's on Board.
Absolutely, and we're here not only to say, but also to help you and to have your involvement, your participation as well. We're going to, as mentioned, we're going to award the European winners and best practice leaders on the show, so that's something to look forward to. And you have received a link, so you're very welcome to ask questions as well, and we can then put them towards our specialists on the show.
But John, before we introduce our amazing speakers, let's see the video which prepared for us Helena Dalli, European Commissioner, who couldn't be with us today, so we asked her to give us a video. Helena Dalli became the first Commissioner for Equality on December 1st, 2019. In her role, Dalli is responsible for strengthening European commitment to inclusion and equality in all its senses. Let's see the video, please.
I thank the European Women on Boards for your role in supporting gender equality in decision-making and for sharing best practices that inspire companies to change. The Gender Diversity Index 2020 is a useful snapshot of gender diversity in leadership positions in Europe. Achieving gender balance in this area is a priority for the Commission. It is also one of the main goals of the gender equality strategy for the period 2020-2025. A lot more needs to be done in order to achieve gender balance on company boards. Despite encouraging signs in some member states, progress remains slow and uneven across the EU. Many member states do not have significant measures to address the matter, and the gap between countries continues to increase. In the last 10 years, the share of women on boards has risen by 27% to reach 36% in countries that have binding targets. By contrast, it rose to 28% in countries taking soft measures. And it increased hardly at all in countries taking no action, where the share of women on boards is under 16%. I welcome the legislative initiatives that some governments have launched recently. For instance, in the Netherlands there are new targets, and in Germany the scope of current rules are being extended. These are good examples for other member states still hesitating to act. Unblocking the proposal for a directive on gender balance on boards is a priority for my mandate. The proposal does not impose a strict quota. Rather, it sets out a target to reach, and merit and qualification remain the first criteria to consider. I suppose that with the support of the Portuguese presidency and the following two presidencies, all which strongly favour the proposal, we will make progress. Adopting the directive would help us to deliver on one of the actions of the Gender Equality Strategy 2020-2025. Our societies must make the best use of all our resources, especially in the context of overcoming the downturn in our economies resulting from the current pandemic. I wish you a fruitful discussion and an inspiring exchange of best practices.
Okay, wonderful. Very interesting indeed. And I think now perhaps we could introduce our speakers, Diana.
Yeah, I will introduce the first one, the first speaker, Renate Nicolai from European Commission. Renate is head cabinet of Věra Jourová, the European Commissioner, Vice President for Values and Transparency, working on matters such as rule of law or disinformation.
And we have another speaker today. We have Professor Sara Falcao-Casaga from the University of Lisbon. She's an associate professor, and she has done extensive research focusing mainly on gender, the labour market, gender pay gap, gender and decision maker, and gender and organizations.
Another speaker on our side will be Daniela Uličná from Kantar. Daniela is a director at Kantar Public working on a research, evaluation and consultancy assignments in different areas of social policy.
And finally, we have Päivi Jokinen, representing the European Women on Board. She's an experienced member of board in stock-listed companies, as well as in non-profit associations, a passionate international business leader with solid and tangible results in growing sales of industrial goods and improving business profitability. She also holds a number of different positions and board membership.
But now I would like to ask Renate to open this event. So Renate, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for hosting the event, European Women on Boards and Deloitte. It's such an important moment in Europe to stand up and to defend the principles of diversity and equality, especially in the current COVID times that we are experiencing and which are definitely also putting pressure on our rights and values. We have just heard from Commissioner Dalli, the first ever Equality Commissioner of this Commission, where we stand in terms of the development on women on boards. And I think one can summarize it that there is slow but steady progress, which is good. But on the other hand, we are also seeing in Europe a backward trend and in some of the member states. And hence it is very important to kind of continue to work for a stable and legal framework that applies everywhere in Europe and that provides security for opportunities for women and for gender equality and diversity on boards everywhere. So it is a moment to stand up for diversity and equality, and this is exactly what you are doing with this event, which I applaud. This is not only an aspect of rights and values. This is, as we have heard in the testimonials and in the video that was shown in the beginning of the event, this is also an economic aspect. aspect. This is economically driven because we have plenty of studies from the corporate world, from academia, that clearly show that if you have diverse structures that represent the breadth of our societies, then this is good for business in normal times and also in crisis times. And there's also an economic rationale in a demographically changing Europe to make the best use of all our potential, of all our human resources, and not to let them kind of, disappear since they cannot climb up the ladder. The Commission is kind of, I'm very proud to say, giving a very good example of diversity and gender equality. We had never had a Commission that is so strong on having a gender equal balance. And we also have a President of the Commission who has increased the objective to have not only 40% of senior management being female in the Commission, but moving up to 50%. I can testimony that this trend that has already started in the previous Commission had to be supported by clear changes. We had to kind of include the quota, but we also had to adapt our recruitment structures. We had to look at the panels so that they are not only male dominated panels. We had to develop mentorship structures to set incentives for women to actually apply for higher position. But this shows as a showcase also from a public administration perspective that change can happen. Let me now guide you through what I think what needs to be done, both from a legislative point of view and from a more political point of view. We need to kind of develop our legislative framework further, and I would like to address 4 concrete suggestions and areas of work that we are engaged in. The first is related to work-life balance. You might remember that in the previous Commission, when Vice President Jourova was Commissioner for Justice and Equality, we kind of, together with other colleagues, pursued this directive on work-life balance. We adopted it in 2019, and it's now in transposition with the member states. This is a very innovative approach from a legislative point of view to accompany work-life balance, to come up with modern ideas throughout the life cycle of people in the workforce. That includes parental leave, paternity leave, carers leave, things which were not common in all member states before. And I think especially in the COVID times, we are all in a crash course of making flexible working arrangements happen, dealing with home office and nevertheless maintaining a high level of efficiency in the structures that we work in. So when we go back to the new normal after the pandemic, hopefully when we have kind of dealing with it better, then we should also factor in these kind of, context of the work-life balance and already build that in our strategies. The second important legislative context is the Women on Boards Directive. As we have heard by Madame Dalli, this remains a political objective of this Commission to have this put into law in all member states. We are having indeed promising presidencies ahead of us, and we are all looking at the elections in Germany to see whether after elections in autumn, also there will be a change because of course they are an important member states where we hope that in the future we can also get their support for this European legislative initiative that would kind of bring legal certainty for all women wherever they are in Europe to have their fair chances. The third legislative initiative we're working on relates to the gender pay gap and transparency in that. We have in our treaty rules since '57 the principle of equal pay. Reality is far from that. We still have a pay difference of around 15–16%, and it's only decreasing very, very slowly. That's why I'm up with a legislative initiative that will make it easier to enforce this and that will do away with these clear-cut discrimination that unfortunately still exists today. And it will hopefully also help us to deal with the underlying stereotypes that exist in some of the sectors we are dealing with. And the fourth legislative work stream that we are going to bring a concrete initiative to violence against women. This can happen also in the workforce, and that's why there is a real need to protect women, not only in domestic circumstances, but also in the workforce against attacks. And we need clearer rules everywhere in Europe to kind of make sure that violence against women is not overlooked, but is actually pursued by the law enforcement authorities. But it will not be enough to only legislate and to complete our legislative framework. We also have to go beyond that. And here again, I would like to kind of commend a couple of venues to pursue. On the one hand, I think we have to do everything we can to increase the employment rate of women everywhere in the EU. It's still deplorable in some of the member states. And it makes so much sense economically to kind of increase it again against our demographic challenge that we also against the fact that we have so many women coming out of higher education and then disappearing just because of the challenges they face in society. We will continue to pursue this in the context of the annual macroeconomic assessment of the European semester to really remind member states that it's part of their economic future, also a higher employment rate for women. The second venue to pursue is what we're doing today. It's really to work with business initiatives to show examples, to kind of engage in the diversity charter, something that we are applauding, for instance, in our diversity strategy that we have, not only with the gender equality strategy, but also with the diversity strategy supported, but also to engage with the leadership in companies, to showcase male senior leaders who kind of, defend the idea of diversity, or to give examples of female leaders, so that, others who are in the system see these kind of, best examples and pursue similar careers. And the third is to kind of support innovative initiatives. There are interesting things such as the No Woman, No Panel initiative or the Brussels Binder initiative. And I can say that, just recently I was, after 17 years in the Commission, for the first time on an all-female panel, which was interesting. I'm not supporting that we should only have all-female panels, but certainly there is an assertiveness that we need to kind of have more equal representation also on the political space. And the fourth point is that we need to continue to do proper data collection. And here I want to applaud the Gender Diversity Index, because also with our annual Gender Equality Index that IGO works on, we every year have to make the case. We have to make the case for the need to actually continue to pursue this agenda, because it's not resolving itself by its own. So in sum, we have to pursue different venues. We have to keep this on the political radar. We have to complete our legislative framework, and we have to kind of support initiatives like yours today. So I wish you a very fruitful discussion, and I fully support your work. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Renata, for the update on the legislative changes and the various initiatives that are being made. While progress is happening, it does seem that there's a lot of work still remaining to be done. Next, we'd like to introduce to you Professor Sarah Falcao, who will speak about women on corporate boards in the European Union, the progress and the challenges. Please.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, great. Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the European Women on Boards for the kind invitation to be one of the speakers today, and would like to express my warmest greetings to the organizers, the other speakers, and to all the audience. My next slide, please. Last September, the World Economic Forum published this astonishing news update. So scientists thought that only male birds sang until women joined the research. So for over 150 years, so dating back at least Charles Darwin's writings, scientists generally believe that bird song was a male characteristic, a male attribute. So this fantastic discovery that in many bird species, both male and female birds actually sing was due to female researchers who over the last 20 years have joined this research field. So this illustrative, clear-cut example shows us how research approaches can be affected by the people who undertake the research work, by their biases, their cognitive assumptions, backed up by their subjective experiences. It also shows us how important it is to have women involved, to have women's voices, to have their views, their insights, their skills, and tacit knowledge contributing to more realistic, objective, and credible outputs. So it's worthwhile reminding of the most significant gender imbalances in key institutions of our current times, of our contemporary and presumably progressive societies. So my next slide, please. So data report to the subdomain power of the Gender Equality Index, published by the European Institute for Gender Equality. And what you can see in the darker blue bar is the representation of women in the political domain, where we can see that in regional assemblies, parliaments, and ministers across the EU, women are still largely underrepresented. The next one, please. The same applies to the social domain. For instance, the first one has to do with national Olympic sports. So the share of women in the highest decision-making bodies in these organizations, where they are less than 19% of members in these highest decision-making bodies, but also in organizations where traditionally women have outnumbered men in terms of the total workforce. And I'm now referring to publicly forecast organizations and research funding institutions. The next slide, please. When we look at the economic domain, women are still largely underrepresented in central banks in the EU. And of course, we can ask ourselves how gender sensitive have the monetary policies be across the European Union with such an underrepresentation of women, so less than 23%. And underrepresented again, but I'm going to return to this topic in the largest publicly listed companies in Europe. The next slide. Thank you. As for social dialogue and the institutions involved in collective bargaining and social consultation, we can see that women account for only less than 19% of those in the highest decision-making bodies of employers' organizations, and less than 22% in employees' organizations, such as trade unions, for instance. My next slide, please. So what we can see from these illustrative examples is that decision-making is still in men's hands, still being driven by men. And the causes of this persistent phenomenon are rather complex, and of course it's not the session to go through them, all the barriers in detail, but I would like just to share that the most suitable metaphor that I have come across is not only the glass ceiling metaphor, but actually the labyrinth metaphor. And with a colleague, the next slide, please. With a colleague from the International Labour Organization, Joan Lortie, we provide in this book an overview of the key metaphors and, of course, the conceptual frameworks that help us understanding the main causes of gender inequalities in organizations and in the labor market in general. So this was my advertising moment, but with no revenues involved. So this publication is totally free But the labyrinth metaphor is intended to shed light on the complexity of barriers that women face over the course of their careers. So I'm talking about society level barriers, but also organizational level barriers, because all organizations are gendered. Every organization is a gender regime. I'm also referring to family-related barriers, and we are all aware of the persistent unequal share of caring and domestic responsibilities. But I'm also thinking of individual-related barriers, as we all, men and women, we internalize restrictive gender norms that are embedded in our identities, in our options, in our preferences, in the efforts we devote to different walks of life. So let me now return to the largest listed public companies, please, the next slide. So here we have the representation of women, and the latest data delivered by the European Institute for Gender Equality again. And in the red bar, you have the European Union average. So the representation of women on boards is 30% in November 2020. And I have also included Iceland and Norway for the most obvious reasons. And what we can see is that in those countries where the representation of women on boards is above the European average, we can see that most of them have binding legal measures in place. So not all of them, which is also interesting to observe and to research, but in most of them, this is the case. We have gender quotas in place. Let me now invite you to look at the top 10 EU countries in terms of the EU representation. And maybe the next one, yes. What lies behind such a nice, apparently nice picture? What lies in those 10 countries? So Italy, France, Belgium, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, United Kingdom, Sweden, Finland. What we have in all these countries is a huge gap between executive and non-executive positions. So this means that the increasing gender balance on boards has largely been achieved on the basis of women's appointment to non-executive positions. So, and now, of course, I'm going to be quite provocative, and I wish we could have a lively debate afterwards. We also can see that in 8 countries there are no women chairing the board, and what we also can see is that women account for only 7% of those filling the highest post in the boardroom. So being provocative now, can we say that actually business is being done as usual? since in no country, and we are talking about the top 10 countries in the EU, in no country has the percentage of women in the boardroom crossed over the minimum threshold required to achieve a critical mass and dissipate the so-called token effect. My next slide, please. Now, the challenges, in terms of the challenges ahead, how to move from an apparent greater gender balance to gender equality, where both men and women not only share the number of seats, but also the seats where power sits, having equal voice in strategic decision making. The next slide, please. Thank you. And how to move from a greater numerical balance, a balance that we can describe in numbers, to a situation in which gender equality in the whole organization, in the whole company, is taken as a priority. So measures are designed and implemented to dismantle all barriers to gender equality, to eliminate the gender pay gap, to suppress the glass ceiling for other women, to fix the broken rank for women in the lower ranks, to ensure that both men and women fulfill their rights and duties as mothers and fathers and full citizens. The next one, please. How can we keep the topic high in the agendas, in the plural, not only of national and European politicians, but also of all the relevant stakeholders? So how can we persuade the key actors in the field of the need to bring women to power positions? And not only because it makes business sense, but because it's good governance. And I'm going to be provocative again. Nobody would dare ask if freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of expression make good profit. So why should we have to be concerned with demonstrating that such a fundamental value and right in democratic and fair societies, a constitutional principle in many societies where we live in, is profitable? So my point is that is the only way, but above all is what is right, is what is compatible with the values and the core principles of democratic and the progressive societies where we live, and that we will pass to the next generations as a reference of our best civilization beliefs and our action. So I'm going to finalize my presentation with this tribute to a well-known woman who passed away recently, but also to many other women and many in this audience, I'm sure, along with some men, of course, who strongly believe and take action as much as they can from wherever they stand for the necessary change. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Sarah. It was amazing. I really love the facts which you provided, but as well the last quote which you made on the woman belongs in all places where decisions are being made. It's something which really stayed in my heart. So thank you very much for that. I would like now to introduce Päivi Jokinen, the chairwoman of European Women on Boards, and ask her for her presentation. Päivi, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. It's a big moment for us at European Women on Boards today. I'm so happy to be here with these wonderful women. I've been listening to what Renate had to say about concrete measures. Sarah was so emotional in her welcoming everybody, and obviously I feel truly emotional myself that finally we get to publish these results and congratulate some of the winners. European Women on Boards was founded in 2013, and our mission has stayed more or less the same with some wording differences. We are here to support European leaders to achieve gender equality. Gender equality means to us equality in decision making. So as Sarah was just pointing out, not only numbers of women, but women which have equal voices, women who have decision making power as well. So today is the day when we will soon be able to congratulate the winners. But before we get there, I wanted to just say a couple of words from my perspective on what makes me very happy about the results that we are sharing today. As Helena Dalli pointed out, to make progress, we need examples, we need benchmarks, we need to be able to share how progress has been made. And this is what this study is all about. We want to bring the best practice leaders forward, and we want to talk to those top 20 companies and even more to understand what has happened and to share those practices with everybody. And it doesn't require us to do that. We hope that as the results will be distributed across Europe, companies themselves will be able to find the best practice leaders of their country and be able to establish dialogue with these companies. So that's why for us it's very important that we actually name companies, which is quite rare. So many studies are being made with general data per country, as you could see in Professor Sarah's presentation. But for us it's very important that we actually name companies and that we get to share their best practices. And this is what we have done in 2019. And in 2020, we now have a different set of business leaders, which on the other hand was a bit of a surprise to me. I did not expect to see so much difference between 2019 and 2020. But on the other hand, it gives us more companies to talk to. So that makes me happy. Also, we have seen that the number of companies with high participation of women has doubled. And although we start from small numbers, it's still doubling, which hopefully means that if today we are above 60% of 60 companies that have a high number of women in their leadership teams, maybe next year it's 120 out of 600. So then we start to really see progress. I seem to see that when the machine starts rolling, the progress gets faster. So focusing on the positives today, the other thing that I wanted to highlight here is that our study also includes some questions on diversity and inclusion agendas, and over 100 companies have responded. It seems that a majority of companies today have a diversity and inclusion agenda. They have set targets and there are policies in place. And this, of course, is very important for this progress to be made. So very proud to be here today with all these wonderful people who have helped us set up this event. And before we start announcing the winners, I would like to hand over to somebody who knows a bit more about the methodology. But maybe if Diana and John could introduce the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Päivi. Yes, definitely. I think let's invite Daniela, and we can see the results of the index.
Welcome, Daniela.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. Thank you, Päivi, for this introduction, and also thank you for sharing some of the spirit of today's presentation. As you rightly pointed out, we have some good news to share, and we will be ending this event today by celebrating the winners. I think it's really important to bear in mind, as Renata Nicolai said in her introduction, that change can happen. And what we see today is that actually change can even happen over 1 year. And This is very positive and something that has really been a very enthusiastic moment for us when we saw the results of today's study, of this year's study. But I would also like to note, and we shouldn't forget the fact that indeed the global situation, and when we look at all the companies in the data set, there is still a lot of room for improvement. So on one hand, let's celebrate, but also I would like to encourage everyone in the audience, everyone who is looking at the report, to indeed look at what the best practices are doing and how can they learn from them. And also possibly take hold of the book that Sarah just presented, because indeed this is a matter of very complex barriers and that needs considered and conscious effort at all levels. Thank you. So next slide. I will be presenting shortly the results of the Gender Diversity Index, which is a measurement of gender diversity at corporate leadership, and we cover multiple layers of governance, as you will see. Next slide. EWOB has decided to enter into this adventure of designing such an index for multiple reasons. Firstly, as we have heard several times by now, because of the importance of measurement in increasing awareness, but also in identifying where there are good examples to learn from. Secondly, and that's a bit the unique aspect of this index, is indeed we are looking at the company level data. It's not just country data, we are looking at how companies improve and what are the best companies. We also look at the quite broad definition of leadership that I will go into in a little bit more later, which allows us to look at a more granular analysis of the different types of positions where men and women are and what is the gender equality at those levels. And finally, I think an important element of this index is also that we engage with the companies that are listed in the study. We have asked them to validate and to review the data that we have on them. And I'd like to say that nearly 20% of the companies named took this opportunity. And this is not only a validation process for data, but it's also a process of engagement and raising awareness among the companies themselves of where they stand compared to their peers. Next slide. A little bit about what the index is composed of. As I said earlier, we look at a broad definition of government leadership. We looked at publicly available data on the following levels of corporate governance. We looked at the board, which is called the supervisory board or some other name depending on the company, which is the top layer. But we also looked at the executive layer, and there can sometimes be one or two executive layers depending on the structure of the company. There is management board, the C-suite, and we also took all the persons in these functions. Furthermore, we also looked into all the board committees that were publicly available, so the control committee, the audit committee, and the remuneration committee. And we took all this data, and we also took into consideration the absolute share of all women in these positions, meaning removing any double counting. So if a woman has 3 positions in 3 committees, she was only counted once. Next slide. And based on these 4 indicators, we have compiled an index. The index is therefore composed of and the absolute share of all women in all the levels, meaning there is no double counting if a single person has multiple function. And this is the indicator that has the most weight in the composition of the index. Then women on the supervisory board, which weighs 20% in the index, women at the executive level, which has an equal weight in the index as women on the board, and then with a slightly lower weight, the share of women in board committees. We have also recalibrated the numbers that we receive by applying this weight to the scale of 1 from 0 to 2, where 1 is an ideal value, because it just is easier to read than if the scale was from 0 to 1 and 0.5 was the ideal value. So remember, when you will be listening to me next, that indeed the ideal value of the index is 1. Thank you. And this is the global average result for the companies that we have in the data set today. We see that the average GDI for all the 668 companies that we covered is 0.56. That actually, what does that mean? That means that most of the companies have actually around a quarter of women in corporate leadership. But it's also interesting to look at the distribution of these companies. And we see that actually only around 10% of companies, so only 62 companies, have a GDI which is close to 1, meaning 0.8 or above. And we also see that these companies tend to be from the same countries. They are from a smaller group of countries. France, Norway, UK, and Sweden constitute the vast majority of companies in this best performing group. On the other hand, we have some 72 companies that have a GDI of less than 0.3. And this group is also dominated by companies from certain countries, mostly Switzerland, Germany, Netherlands, Poland, and Czechia. Next slide, please. On the positive findings first. So I think it's really, to us, very positively surprising to see that there was substantial progress in 1 year, in only 1 year, in the number of companies that have a GDI score of more than 0.8. They were 5% last year, and they are 10% today. This is a really big step. Similarly, there are substantially more companies today who have 40% or more women in leadership. Again, they are 13% today, and they were only 8% in 2019. And we were also this year able to look at comparing really the names of people who were in our data set in 2019 and who are in our data set in 2020, and see who has left the leadership roles in these companies and who joined. And here we also see that there are more women joining than there are women leading. So 35% of the leaders who newly joined corporate leadership in these companies were women, while they were only 24% of the leading people. Now, 35% of newly coming persons is still not 50%, but it's definitely a good sign that there are more women joining than there are women leaving. Next slide, thank you. I think one of our key findings, and indeed the index is of the European Women on Boards Association, which speaks about the board level. And one of our key findings is around the board level. And we see that there are today 34% of women on boards in the companies that we studied. This is a slight improvement compared to the last year, but I would also say that there are 10% of companies where there are very few and sometimes even no women at boards at all. However, the good news is that this number is also declining. So there were 29% companies in 2019 with such low share of women in boards. Next slide, please. I think this is also something that Professor Sarah has already mentioned. There is a big difference between the executive and the non-executive functions. And we see the same trend in our study. While we have 34% of women on boards, when we count all the women in all the leadership, they are only 28%. And this goes down to 17% when we only look at the executive roles. When we look at only at the C-suite, it's even fewer, so 14%. And finally, I think this is really something that is quite sobering. Only 9% of the chairs of boards in our data set were women. Next slide. The other aspect that I think is very important to bear in mind is that there are clearly major differences between the countries. There are countries which are much closer to gender equality than others, and as I already hinted earlier, some of the best performing countries consistently come from certain countries, and some of the least performing companies come also consistently from a certain group of countries. This isn't purely an issue of quotas, because as we see, there are countries where progress has been made without quotas, and there are also countries that have quotas, but where progress is less apparent. Next slide. Now, I think time is running, so I will not go in detail into this slide, but maybe two interesting findings here. Finland was the country that made the biggest step and the biggest progress on the JDI index between 2019 and 2020. And interestingly, Netherlands was the country where we saw most companies having an improvement compared to last year. So 78% of Dutch companies made an improvement. Now, I would like to say something about the less positive findings. Clearly, while some companies progress, others stagnate. There are still nearly 2/3 of companies in the dataset where the share of women at executive level is 20% or less. This is a big majority. There are also nearly 1/3 of companies where the share of where the GDI decline. And that's also an important proportion. I have to say here that in most cases, the decline wasn't major. And finally, I also think that the fact that there are 7% of companies that have a GDI of below 0.3, which is really, really low, is also another fact that needs attention and improvement. And the last slide, I think, just to conclude, and I think as pointed out by previous speakers, we should bear in mind that change is possible. We see a substantial number of companies making changes over 1 year. So if it's possible there, it should be possible elsewhere. We need to celebrate the winners, but we should also remember that clearly the situation is very uneven across companies and across countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela, very much for explaining to us how the index worked, but as well about the results. It was nice to hear. At the same time, I would like to give you a big thank you for the hard work which is done on your side, because I believe the level of engagement with the companies and the awareness which you are created through that, it's really the role modeling for that. So thank you very much for this hard work. Now we are on the stage where we need or should announce the winners. So I would like to give the space back to Päivi to announce it. So Päivi.
Hello, and I am back. So
you are back.
A big moment. We have actually 3 companies that have a gender diversity index of exactly 1, which means that they are exactly equally represented women and men on their leadership teams and boards. This is great news, and of course you need to know that this is what we're looking for. We are not looking for 1.7. We are looking for 1. So gender equality and best balance between genders in the leadership teams. So there are actually 3 winners, as I mentioned, and the first winner is a British company, Asura, and Asura comes from the real estate sector. We are very proud to present the first winner, Asura from the UK. After Asura, the second winner is a Swedish property company, Wihlborgs Fastigheter. If you change to the next slide, thank you. And soon we will be able to hear a couple of words from their representative. But before that, let me introduce the third winner with the exact score of 1, and that is a British company, Granger, which also comes from the real estate sector. This almost implies that we should learn something from property and real estate sector to learn more what they have done right. But actually, what Daniela did not mention is that the sectoral findings are not very conclusive, and it seems that there are many good industries and many good sectors, and there's not a big difference between them. But Now, as I mentioned, we have one of the winners with us today, Ulrika Hallengren, who is the CEO of Wihlborgs. Maybe you would like to introduce her on the stage.
Ulrika, welcome, and once more congratulations for being the best within like 668 companies. I believe it's an amazing result. So welcome on the board now.
Hi, Ulrika. Yeah, it's really quite an incredible achievement. Practically speaking, could I ask a question? How did you manage to achieve this result?
Thank you for having me here, and thank you for the prize, of course. I'm very proud that we are mentioned in these platforms, and it is a very important question for us because we think it's the only way that we can be sustainable over time, that we take diversity questions really serious and work for so that we really are represented in our leader groups and in our boards with different kind of people from different kind of backgrounds and so on. That's the only way that we can be aware of the changes that are coming around us and that we can make the right decisions for the future. So I think it's worth mentioning that we haven't achieved this goal on the gender diversity equality without very focused work. We have set up our goals and we have worked focused on them for a long time. We have to be aware of that and be prepared that we wish for changes. And it's only if we plan for that and focus on how that affects us that we can achieve these goals.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you for that. Thank you very much, Ulrika. Perhaps now let's go back to Päivi and to introduce the 20 best practice leading companies. Hello, Päivi.
Okay, hello, I am back again. Do we have the slide for that?
We do.
Thank you very much. And as Daniela has mentioned, you notice from the flags that many of these companies come from the same countries. So places number 4 and 5 from Sweden, Kinnevik and Sweco. On place 5, sharing it with Sweco, is Iliad from France. On place number 7, ASR Nederland from the Netherlands. Then on the place number 8, unfortunately, I cannot see that. I'm sorry, I have to look at my own slide. It is not clear to me what that says.
You can see it now.
So, place number... Oh, thank you. Place number 8 is Halma from the UK. Sodexo has been on our leaderboard for many, many years, so number 9. And Suez Environment, the same, number 9, also always on the top of our charts. L'Oréal as well from France. Auto Trader from the UK was on the list last year as well. Pandora from Denmark. Gessina from France. Taylor Wimpey from the UK. Kering from France. Wolters Kluwer from the Netherlands. Severn Trent from the UK. RMS Mezzanine from Czech Republic, Money Supermarket from the UK, DNB Norway, and finally Centrica from the UK. So thank you very much, best practice leaders. We'll be in touch to hear how you did this.
Thank you very much, Päivi, for introducing the best practice leaders. But we have 3 of them, or 3 of their representatives today with us here. So I would like to introduce them. The first one is Anna Stenberg from Swedish investment group Kinnevik. Kinnevik is an 80-year-old entrepreneurial investment group. Kinnevik believes in the power of technology to make life better for people around the world. And they are managing it with the woman.
Okay, thank you. Also, we have Ingrid de Swart from ASR Netherlands. This is a Dutch insurance company. It's one of the top 3 insurance companies in the Netherlands and offers insurance, pension and mortgages to consumers, self-employed people and companies.
And last but not least, we invited as well Jennifer Ward from Halma, Global Group of Life-Saving Technologies based in UK. Halma is a global group of life-saving technology companies focused on growing a safer, cleaner and healthier future for everyone every day.
And I think now we have a few questions that we would be interested in asking. And so perhaps the very first question, let's start with Anna. Anna, could you tell us what benefits do you think your company has actually gained due to having this level of equality?
Well, for us, it's absolutely natural and the most important ingredient to get high-performing teams. In order to have, diverse teams will definitely make us even more high-performing. We can see that our decisions that we make are better. We can also see that we become an even more attractive employer in terms of the ability to attract the best talents, because they are also really eager to join companies with inclusive and diverse cultures. And we can also see that our culture in general is much more, attractive and inclusive and a better workplace for so many reasons, but also in terms of, the level of innovation and the level of, ideas being generated from the team is also increasing. So for us, this is such an important ingredient in making sure that we are as high performing and also, a growing and fastly moving, developing company.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Anna, thank you very much. You will get for sure more questions in a few moments. And thank you for sharing with us how important is the culture which you are changing, which is very inclusive and diversified. So thank you for that. I have a question now for Ingrid. If you had to pick up one topic to continue talking about equality, what it will be?
So thank you for having me, and thanks, of course, for the nice words around ASR. I think the major word around this theme is about not only having role models in your company, but also building on the funnel with young women to enable them to grow within your company or at other companies in order to make it possible to get more diverse teams across the Netherlands and across all countries. And for me, that's also about boardroom coaching, where we do a lot about in the Netherlands. And that means that we coach women cross gender and cross companies. And that has proven to be very successful.
Okay, thank you very much. Perhaps now we have a question for Jennifer. Jennifer, could you tell us how does equality influence your culture and the operations of your firm? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Jennifer, we do not hear you. Not
no.
yet.
Oh no, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Maybe you are muted. We still do not hear you. Not yet.
What a pity.
What a pity.
Yeah, no. I think we'll have to skip.
Maybe we will leave you for a while that you can try to fix it. And in the meantime, John, we can move to the...
I think we'll continue and then we'll come back to you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I think basically we would like to thank all of the best European companies that have joined us today. Definitely congratulations, and to continue this effort, to keep changing the corporate culture. And I think now perhaps we can open the panel for questions, yes?
Yeah, we can. I will just try once more whether there is a change on the side of Jennifer, whether she can already speak. Jennifer, can you try?
No.
No.
Oh dear.
No.
Okay.
It's a pity. Let's wait. Let's try to fix it. So let's open the panel itself. So
absolutely. So we have some questions here, and we have some questions on the screen. So would you like to?
Maybe we can start. So are all the panelists ready for the questions? Perfect. Okay, super. So thank you everybody for really sharing with us till now all the presentations, but as well your thoughts. I believe it's great to hear from you. But I have now a question to Ulrike. The first question is, what is the best advice you can give to other companies how to accelerate the change? Ulrike, please.
I would say that if you are convinced that you already have and you are a role model of how we want to perform in the best way today, and that is also will be the best way tomorrow, then of course, don't change. But if you see that there is change coming in new demands and new customers, and we have new questions to handle in the society as a whole, then I think you have to realize that you have to change to be aware and to be sustainable in that. Mm-hmm. But that is the first question. You have to realize that change is a way of being resistive and sustainable. So when you have realized that, then you can take the next step and start the action plan and how you should act to make this change happen. And you can't change by voting in one or two that are a bit different from you. You have to really take responsibility to make this platform so that you can really listen to those persons that are so have a other background than you have or something like that. So you have to first decide that you need a change, and then make the plan on how, and make the platform big enough so that these persons you really make room for them. Mm-hmm. It's really important that you don't choose people that are too like the things you already have, because if you do that, then of course you will get any change either.
Thank you very much, Ulrike, for your comments.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think I would like to go off script a little bit here, because while we've seen that significant change was made from 2019 to 2020, this is one of our questions, and this is something which I was wondering about myself. In 2020, of course, we've had the COVID pandemic, and this has disrupted all of the economies and the companies. I think it's given everyone an experience of the flexibility of work, teleworking, and these different changes. But perhaps if I could ask, for Jennifer, how do you think the progress towards equality has been impacted by the COVID pandemic? What might we see when we see the next results?
And as well, Jennifer, how did you manage in your company this situation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great questions, and I think very relevant in today's society. Unfortunately, I think in many countries we did see women leaving the workforce because of the pandemic, and that was especially in the United States, I saw that, as well as in the UK, women being forced to leave the workforce in order to deal with the home pressures of homeschooling and other things. However, on the positive side, I also think that men have been exposed to the work and home challenges in a completely new way, and they've learned how to do remote balancing of those pressures on both sides. I'm a firm believer that we do have to balance gender roles both at home and at work, which is why Helma has introduced our own equal parental leave policy globally, offering the same amount of paid parental leave for both genders. It's a small step, but it's one that emphasizes the need for us to be balancing, not just at work, but also at home.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. We have one question from the audience, and it's for Anna. But Anna, I believe you already covered partially during your presentation, but it seems that the audience is looking for more exploration on your side, which is related to why you believe that economically it provides the benefits to the company economically to have women leaders. You already mentioned about the performance, increase of performance, etc. But can you elaborate a bit more, because there is then interest on the audience?
Yes, of course. I mean, for example, we are an investment firm, And we are constantly looking for the best entrepreneurs, for the most exciting companies to invest in. And if we have an investment team, for example, that is not diverse, it will of course be harder for us to identify and attract a diverse group of entrepreneurs and companies. So in order for us to really broaden our pipeline of companies to invest in, we need to have a diverse mindset and a diverse team in order to do so. And to us, that is key in order for us to grow, to really make sure that we can reach out to the most diverse and broad group of companies to potentially invest in. So that, I would say, is a very concrete reason. And I mean, today there are so many surveys and studies and researches that have really, confirmed how direct impact a more diverse management team or board actually has on everything from the development in terms of equity, but also in terms of profit and growth. So for us, it's a key strategic topic that is absolutely driven by our CEO and on the management team level. Because I also just want to mention that one issue, I think, is that many companies tend to do this into an HR or a people project with a start and an end, instead of fully integrating it to the company's strategic agenda and really integrating D&I into the processes of the company rather than making it into an isolated project. And I think that's where we have truly succeeded, and that's our focus going forward as well.
Thank you very much. And definitely, I think, of course, it makes a lot of sense to have this diversity, to have this possibility. However, one of the figures that really struck me was, I think it was something about 6% of CEOs, only 6% of women at the CEO level. So while this makes sense, practically speaking, at the top level, we're not really seeing it, seeing it there. So perhaps. For
Päivi?
Yeah, Päivi, if we could ask, what do you think needs to be done?
Because 6% seems to be really very low. So how to accelerate the change?
Yeah.
I'm very happy that we have one of those people with us. So it's true that it's a very low number. And I'm explaining to everybody that I have a 10-year-old son with whom we discussed this. And he said, how can that be that over 600 of the CEOs are men and only 42 are women? So clearly what we have to do in order for women to get to the CEO positions is to make sure that we have enough women to start with, and that we give women the opportunities to lead P&L roles. Often women end up in functional roles in areas of communication, in HR, and what we need to make sure is that we encourage the women to take another step and to take another position, which might seem like a tough one at first, but gives a lot of satisfaction to have that role mastered. So what we do at European Women on Boards is we train women. Last year we trained over 60 women, and we hope that this training and encouragement gives women the chance to look at their career paths and really take control over how to get to higher positions and to become a CEO and to become a member of the board. It requires merits and competencies. So those competencies need to be developed, and that's how we can get forward. So we need to educate ourselves, obviously, and take the chances and take those roles that lead to higher management and the boards.
Thank you very much, Päivi, for this answer. I really like it, and your energy, it's amazing. So thank you for that as well. I would like to have a question to Sarah, because Sarah talked about biases. And I would like to understand, Sarah, how do you see the role of the science and technology in reducing this unconscious gender bias?
Thank you very much for your question. That's very interesting, because we all know that we have men and women and all the actors intervening in the organizations, in recruitment processes, involved in job evaluation, those who are inviting and appointing women. So gender bias are embedded and they are usually non-conscious bias. So, of course, multidisciplinary teams have been working on the topic and also developing training in order to make people more aware of their deeply ingrained gender bias and how to interpret decision-making processes, on when they have to try to find a man or a woman to a job position, try to not be affected by those biases and just make objective decisions. So there are training and training guides on how to do it, and those guides, they have been drawn up by, in many cases, multidisciplinary research teams, so involving researchers from behavioral science, sociologists, and also people more related even to HRM topics. But I would also say that it's important to, was mentioned before, the relevance of a gender mainstreaming approach in companies, in organizations, and the importance also of action. And that is particularly helpful in a way that, and that's the point in which self-regulatory measures are very important. I have been a strong supporter of binding legal measures, but my point is that they should be combined with incentives to voluntary measures and self-regulation. And that is particularly important because in that case, companies, organizations in general, they will be aware of the need to undertake their own gender audits and diagnoses and try to identify barriers in different domains to gender equality, even those implicit bias in places that may be there. So this cultural shift is particularly important towards a gender equal organization. So to have this degree of awareness, a gender aware perspective integrated, first fully supported by the top manager, but then by all the different managers in the organization in order to undertake an organizational assessment, ideally a gender audit, and then come up with an action plan. And in that plan, as I was saying, addressing gender bias, how to overcome gender stereotypes, and how to support that gender equal interactions in the organization, that every interaction in the organization is supported by gender equal assumptions and not by implicit bias. That, for instance, is maybe one of the alternatives and the options, at least that I have been supporting. This not only focus on bias, it's of course particularly important, but a systemic, institutional, transformative approach in organizations. I don't know whether I have responded to the question. It's a very complex one, but I hope so.
Sarah, I believe you answered perfectly, so thank you very much for that. But if I can maybe, based on your answer, but as well based on Päivi's answer, I would like to ask Daniela, because Daniela have passed through the research. She was in contact with 668 companies, etc. And we just discussed a few minutes ago about this 6%. And I would like to raise the question, but when interviewing the companies, etc., could it be that that many companies want to have women on the leadership positions, but they cannot find the talent? Is there need a change for the recruitment? Did you heard that during your interview? So is there such a limitation on their side? How you see it, please?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So firstly, a quick methodological clarification. We didn't actually interview all the 686K companies. Mm-hmm. We got the data from the publicly available information. As to whether there is shortage of talent, I think this is a big debate that we would be opening. I do think, however, that there is a reproduction of existing structures. Mm-hmm. And this goes in hand with what Professor Sarah has been just saying. We are in our unconscious biases make us prefer people who are like us, and this is the cycle that we have to break. And while I was listening to Päivi and to Sarah, I was also thinking to break this, we also need the men to join this movement. And this is one of the things that I think we also need to say out loud. Of course, I think it's quite natural for women who are in these positions to sponsor other women and to invest in them. But this change will not happen if we don't also have men who join the movement. And so, sorry, it doesn't answer exactly your question, but I think this is one of the big things that we need to achieve for progress to be faster.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure perhaps there's definitely an issue for men. Many might not consider themselves to be sexist. So very few people would admit that they're actually sexist. But it's just maybe not being engaged, not really viewing this as an issue that they need to take care of. So maybe it's important not to be unsexist but anti-sexist, to really to be engaged and proactive in joining to make this more equal.
Mm-hmm. But maybe we can move to another question to Ingrid. And Ingrid, the question would be, because we are discussing really the role of the men, etc., which I believe it was a nice words from Daniela, which she mentioned that without them we cannot manage the change, and I fully agree with that. But do you use quotas in your company?
So in the Netherlands, yes, we have like quotas that we strive for. So only legally we have quotas since the beginning of this year for the amount of women in the supervisory boards, not executive boards. And I am part of an executive board with 2 women and 1 man. So the man is the CEO, but there are more women in the board than men. And I think that's a consequence of a supervisory board, which has 1/3 of women in it, by the way, really wanted to have a diverse team in the executive board and was looking for the best candidates. So they ordered the recruiters to make lists where there was always men and women present. And then they chose the best person for the job. So I would say that it's really a consequence of very, high level choices on strategy, and to make it really, really a top priority to have a diverse team in order to make sure that we really understand society and our clients, and because, of course, the diverse teams perform better. And on the other hand, there is a strong belief also within the executive board that once you have the role models on top and you make sure that you really invest, bringing up the younger women and make them sort of ready for, career steps and really follow them and coach them, that you have, so to say, the 2 buns around the burger. So you do it from top and from bottom. And that's the only way to really also do the more difficult things around culture, all kinds of different symptoms and systems within society and company. And we strongly believe that that should be part of our strategy. So that's the reason why we do it like we do.
I will just react on that, Ingrid, because I really love what you said in regards that the tone comes from the top. This is the reality, and the culture eats the strategy for breakfast. So I believe as long as we create great culture, it's really the most amazing thing which we can do. So thank you for an answer.
Thank you very much.
And what's really nice, going back to the question around COVID that you asked before, is that we see that within COVID, we all become, we have the same problems everywhere. So I have to deal with homeschooling and doing my job. And we really find that this is also helpful to have the debate around the kitchen table, around roles, who does what, but also to make us as role models coming closer to the younger women as well, because I also have sometimes, a 14-year-old next to me because he has a big problem with his Wi-Fi and can't go to school. And when people see that within the company as well, it really helps to see that I have the same struggles and you can have the discussion around it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Perhaps Päivi, I'd like to ask you another question, if I may. Could you tell us, how could we convince men to support diversity in decision making?
Thank you for the question. Here, the winner of this award was a Swedish company, and their CEO, Henrik, is actually on our website, on the European Women on Boards website, and I had the pleasure to speak with him and his HR director, who sent us some of the best practices. He was completely convinced that there is no other way to bring the results that he needs than having as diverse a team as possible and to have many women on board. So I think we need more of those voices. We need those examples. We need the guys who really believe in it and will be happy to share their learnings like Henrik was. So I think this is the way, and also, of course, we know that there are a lot of studies, and studies show this, but I guess we people are a little bit stubborn. I believe it when I see it. So try to convince guys to try it, and I'm pretty sure they will like the diverse team that they get.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will have one more question for Jennifer, because she couldn't speak at the very beginning, and I do apologize for those issues which you had. But we didn't touch too much, even Sarah was mentioning it, about the pay gaps. So can you please share with us how you manage in your company the pay gaps? How do you monitor it? How you make sure that everybody is really treated equally to give the role model examples to others?
Yes, I will do my best. Halma is a portfolio of about 45 small businesses headquartered all around the globe.
Yep.
So sometimes our ability to provide consistency in the way that we do things in every geography is limited. However, we do set targets, as referenced previously, and part of our success has been setting that stretching target of having every leadership team be balanced from a 40 to 60% range for gender diversity. And within that, we have taken steps towards tracking at all levels the gender pay gaps that we might have. Just that effort alone is complicated given our organizational structure. But particularly in the UK, where we're headquartered and listed, we have reporting requirements for our businesses that are based there, and we do track that. It starts from the top, as we've said in every part of this conversation, and our executive team and our PLC board are both very gender diverse, and the pay gaps there are non-existent. So that needs to cascade down to all levels of the organization. I think I love the hamburger analogy that was referenced previously. We see equality in our organization more at the top and at the bottom from both representation as well as pay gap issue. In the middle, it gets very complicated. And so we have a lot more work to do to make sure that we're driving consistency of application and philosophy of equality at those levels as well.
Jennifer, thank you very much for your answer. And I would like to thank all of you ladies that you really help us to provide this topic on the table, or put this topic on the table. It was really appreciated. So thank you very much. And I hope that with you, we will be able to manage this change. And I would like to ask everybody to be joining the change. So thank you very much for the panel.
I found that incredibly interesting. I think there's so many different things to take into consideration about how to actually reach equality. But it seems to be taking an awful lot of time. You know, I saw some study about some countries it might take decades before equality is going to be reached. So I wonder if I could then take this question and perhaps ask you yourself, Diana. What about here at Deloitte? What are we doing in order to have equality?
You know, first of all, I would like to say I'm so proud that I was here and listening so many things, and this helped me to understand that I'm so proud of Deloitte, because not only that internally, you know it, we are internally doing plenty of things which have been mentioned here about mentorships, like for women to prepare them, but as well we are having women in all the panels to make sure that there is equality. We are really looking to the pay gap, so we are doing plenty of things inside. But what I personally love even more, and this is what I love on this conference as well, is that we are giving back to the society. We are doing clubs with women. We are trying to mentor ourselves, women. But as well, the men are in front of all this change, which I believe it's in line with it. So I'm very proud of Deloitte, and I really feel today very emotional, and I thank you to everybody, because I believe we are not alone on that, and that really there are plenty of companies doing a great job. So yeah, I feel very well.
I would definitely agree. And just speaking from my perspective as an employee here at Deloitte, we do have a lot of different online trainings. I like how we have the different video scenarios. How do you actually react in such and such a situation, and what kind of actions would you take? So this is definitely part of our culture, and this diversity, I think the gender is just part of it. Exactly. And one of our colleagues was telling us that it's much bigger than just the gender diversity of the company, that when you have a firm like Deloitte, 300,000 people, or it's a huge, huge company, and you have this kind of cultural training, you have this changing of values, you have inclusion, then this will come out from the company into the families, into the society around. So it was quite inspirational to hear that we can spearhead and make this change in society as well.
So we need to conclude. So I would like really to thank to everybody. It was an amazing time which we spent with you. I really once more thank you to the European Women on Board that you selected us, Deloitte, to be helping you with that. It's a big pleasure for us. So thank you to the panelists, thank you to the audience, and please join the change. I ask this is my last comment, join the change, because without the change we will not move forward. So thank you to everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Diana.